Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The Spectacular Spider-Man, issue number 149, dated April 1989. And this is a comic that I'm kind of including in my A Look at the Many Loves of Peter Parker, where I tried to find issues where then current Peter Parker's girlfriend is relevant to the story. And it seems odd to pick this issue because at this point, Gwen Stacey has been dead for 16 years. But the reason why I picked this issue is one, she's dead but still relevant to the story. And that's sort of how I had entered into the Spider-Man world. The earliest Spider-Man comic that I remember buying was Marvel Team Up number 13. And at that time, Gwen Stacey was already dead, but Peter was still mourning her, so she was still relevant to the stories. And I think the earliest regular Spider-Man I remember buying was issue 130. And again, that's the tie-in to Gwen, because that was the introduction of the Jackal. I missed getting the introduction to the Punisher by a month, but I was only 6 at the time. Okay, take a look at the cover. Cover is our two protagonists, that's Spider-Man and the Charon. The Charon is a clone, a superpowered clone of Professor Miles, and he was the original Jackal. And the backstory of that is in this issue. Cover's a pretty well drawn one. Sal Buscema, who drew the cover at this point in his career, he had changed his style. So the art here is much different than the art Sal had done, say, probably 5 years earlier. I think what had happened is that Sal kind of recognized cases in his past where he saw artists who could not properly update their style kind of being pushed to the wayside. And I think Sal did not want that to happen to him. So he saw what was currently popular at the time, and this is during the time where Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Eric Larson were popular, and he kind of adopted a style that was closer to theirs. So changing one style, particularly when it's been successful for a long time, kind of a hard thing to do, and Sal did it. So I'm going to go into the comic. The comic starts off with the prologue, so it's not a traditional splash page at this moment. We see a wolf, we see a superpowered wolf as it's kind of climbing along the rooftops of Manhattan here. And they are mentioning the Kingpin. And we do see an armored truck being unloaded. However, it's not, say, one involving a bank, but it involves the Kingpin, or I guess his bank here. So this is happening late at night. One of the one of the Kingpin's hoodlums here, he's kind of just daydreaming, what if I were to kind of walk away with this huge bundle of cash? What would happen? The overseer here is making sure this guy doesn't get any ideas. So I think at this point, this guy might have signed his death warrant with this sort of stream of consciousness here. But we see the wolf, and it's getting closer and closer to the men as they're unloading the money. And then the wolf attacks them. And we can see from these panels that this is a brutal attack. And guys are getting murked here, and quite horribly. The money, which I'm sure Kingpin cares the most about, is kind of being strewn all over the place. So I don't know if the wolf here, who seems intelligent enough to specifically target this group, is actually going to take some of the cash, which would really hurt the Kingpin, because he can always get hoodlums. Then it turns out that I think one of the arrangers who made sure the shipments got through, he got a report about this attack, and he's informing his lieutenant. And this is a lieutenant of the Kingpin. So this guy's kind of a capo. And he's telling the capo here that basically they were attacked by a wolf. And that the wolf had actually left a message saying, "Kingpin, the wolves come for you." And this, of course, startles the capo because he has to share this with the Kingpin. And now we go into our splash page, and it's Peter Parker in the classroom. Take a look at the creative team. We see Gerry Conway, he wrote this. I feel that Gerry Conway wrote this to kind of shut up fans who he would encounter at comic conventions who were still bothering him about Gwen Stacey being murked in that manner. Even though I'm pretty sure that it was John Romita who kind of arranged for that. But nevertheless, Gerry was getting a lot of hell. He probably was hoping to shut some of those fans up with this story. Sal Buscema, as I mentioned, he's the artist. This is a much different Sal than the Sal I grew up with when he was doing the Defenders and the Hulk. And yeah, Jim DeFalco is the editor-in-chief. And I think I had mentioned this is from April 1989. Okay, so we see Peter Parker here. He's in class. He's concerned about his thoughts, and his thoughts are about the Charon. And he's not quite sure why the appearance of this long perceived dead foe is coming back. I think he had originally battled Peter Parker probably about 100 issues earlier. I think in issue number 27, 28, the Frank Miller issues. Anyway, while his thoughts are on that, his professor is noticing that he's kind of sleeping in class and not paying attention. So he's kind of being shouted at like a 10-year-old. Kind of reminds me of my junior high school science teacher who would throw erasers at us if he thought we weren't paying attention to him. So anyway, we see some of his classmates here. And it turns out the professor's kind of a cranky old guy. And Peter fesses up to, "Hey, I was daydreaming and not really listening to your cranky old ass." The cranky old professor is giving Peter a little bit of length because he realizes that Peter's a returning student. In terms of Peter Parker in school, I always enjoyed seeing his life in school. But it never mattered to me which school he was in. During the high school years, I was fine with him in high school. When he graduated from high school and he went to college, I was completely fine with those issues. I know there were some fans where, Peter should never have left high school. But, the transition from high school to college for Peter Parker was fine with me. I actually enjoyed those years more. And I think they had the grad school years, and I think this is sort of where it is. And because Peter has like adult responsibilities, he's going to be like kind of a part-time student. I think this is probably based on Bill Mantlo, because when he was working as a full-time writer with Marvel, he was also going to law school, and I bet he was probably going part-time, which kind of like caused him to have this kind of, I guess, extended academic career. So anyway, so Peter's kind of looking bad in front of his fellow students. They have no empathy for him at all. They're enjoying him being punked by this cranky old man. And so class breaks up. Peter does have a classroom rival. And I think his name is Malcolm McBride. He's kind of he's a whiz kid at science. And because Peter Parker is kind of like a returning student, Malcolm really doesn't have much respect for Peter. This is apparently a really elite level class. So I guess this kind of like this real petty rivalry with academics. It turns out there's tension between the two because apparently both of them applied for a particular scholarship or a research grant, and Peter was the one who got it. And because of that, Malcolm is really angry at Peter, because not only does he see Peter as a not serious student, he also saw Peter kind of like get one over him. However, Peter's well known to the lab people at Empire University. He sees a couple here. He's just saying hi, kind of making quiet, like small talk with them. But he just wants to sort of get their suspicions off what he's really going to do. And what he's going to do is he's going to search a secret lab that Professor Miles had used when he was doing his clone experiments, and it was sort of like his little hideaway when he was the Jackal. Apparently, this lab was closed off. No one had bothered with it since the end of the Clone Saga. And that's understandable, because the reason for the original Clone Saga was that so many fans were so upset about boring, bland Gwen Stacey being killed off so quick and unceremoniously that the fans were demanding basically that Peter have a proper goodbye with Gwen. So they came up with that Clone Saga as a way of saying, okay, this is Peter saying goodbye to Gwen. So I think, I don't know why I brought that up. Okay, so anyway, I'll get back to the story. Peter's thinking about Gwen and the Gwen clone. And he's looking through the lab here, and the lab is a real mess. So he's not sure whether he's going to get any answers from this lab. Then Peter, his spider sense is going off, so he has a hunch that he may be onto something. And it looks as Peter is investigating this. Sorry, my throat's really dry. He sees an old book here, and it looks like it was written by Professor Miles, so it's kind of like a diary of his. However, Peter is so caught up with this discovery, he doesn't notice something else. And basically, this is a test tube that has some type of fluid in it. That was probably what was setting off his spider sense. Not the book, but this test tube, or the contents in it. So anyway, Peter's reading it. He knows that it's from Professor Miles Warren, and he's hoping that he can get some answers from the book. So he's so hyper-focused on reading this diary by Professor Miles that he just kind of jets from the secret lab. However, it turns out there was someone else also in the lab. And what appears to have happened is that Peter kept the door open upstairs. And it seems like Malcolm McBride, Peter Parker's like academic rival, followed him down here. And the thing was, he was kind of snooping around, hoping to catch Peter, basically being unethical and hoping to get that grant that he won canceled. So Malcolm's basically kind of being a weasel here. However, Malcolm sees the test tube, and it catches his attention, and he's kind of wondering what's in it. Then we cut to federal court in Pennsylvania. And this is the tombstone aspect of the story. I'm not really going to run through it because the Tombstone saga is one that I don't really know a lot about, even though I have to admit the issues that I picked up from it, they always interest me. So I think I was losing interest in comic books at the time, but I was still reading some that had this saga, and it was actually I was actually enjoying it. And it turns out that um, Joe Robbie is on trial. He's on trial for a murder that he helped Tombstone with. So apparently, Robbie, prior to working at the Bugle, he might have in the course of his Philadelphia job did something unethical. Because they're not saying Robbie murdered the guy; they're saying Robbie knew about the murder, and he just kind of just watched, and not watched the murder, but the body being buried. Tombstone is admitting that he has like a really long criminal rap sheet. He's not a nice person, but he's saying also, yeah, if I wanted this guy dead, I would have already killed him. So I have nothing to gain by this guy living, which wasn't untrue because he wanted to torture Robbie. One of the reporters is from the Daily Bugle. She has to cover this story and it's difficult for her because she's basically covering this trial about her, former boss, who she probably liked and respected. So anyway, she's contacting Joe. She's contacting Robbie's replacement at the time, because since he was like an important character, he obviously had to have an important role, and she's the one kind of making decisions on how to report this, since Joe was still a employee of the Daily Bugle. So anyway, J. Jonah Jameson's secretary, Gloria Grant, who was a longtime friend of Peter Parker's, she was first introduced definitely in '74, formally, although some people will date the first appearance of her in '72, although she wasn't specifically named in that issue. A character who looked like her was drawn in it. But nevertheless, Gloria, she's quite happy here, and it turns out she's in love. And when Gloria shares this information with Robbie's replacement, I think she's Kate. Kate flips out because she recognizes the name that Gloria gave as her boyfriend, and it's Eduardo Lopo. And Kate can't believe that she's going to somehow have to break it to Gloria that, the guy you're in love with is a master criminal. I'm not sure if the Lobos run an organization or they're just a superpowered duo. So anyway, we cut back to Empire State University, and we see Malcolm here. And he's looking at the stuff that he extracted from that test tube that he found in the secret lab. And he says that it is a virus, and it's one that he's never seen before. And he's impressed by how complex it is. And basically, it's described as recombinant DNA. I think that's basically genetically modified DNA. So basically, I think what happens to this DNA, it cuts part of the DNA off, and then it replaces it with something else. So that's how the cloning works. So it's less than say growing a clone from a single cell, and more like it takes over a current body, and its DNA changes from that person's body to whoever the clone is intended to be, like Gwen Stacey. So when that young woman who is, we'll come to it later, the young woman who was the clone of Gwen Stacey, her body, her cells actually belong to another person. Okay, so it turns out that Malcolm is a little sloppy with this virus, and also the virus is very aggressive, as in it will seek out a host, similar to how the alien facehugger works. So Malcolm thinks he's going to be rich because this is a potentially huge find. However, the virus attacks him, and he's basically acting like he's being maced. So at this point, his story is hanging at the moment. Then we cut to Peter and Mary Jane's room. I think at this point they were living with Aunt May, so they basically had a room to themselves in Aunt May's house. And Peter is engrossed in the diaries of Professor Miles here. He's pointing out that the things that Miles had told him as the jackal, they're contradicted by what he's reading in this diary. So Peter is kind of shocked that the jackal lied to him. And he can't understand how it could be that a supervillain lied to him. And the idea that supervillains lie is a complete alien concept to him. Peter's the guy who sends money to the Nigerian prince and thinks, why would a prince lie about that? So, yeah, Peter's being really dumb here. But nevertheless, he's engrossed in this mystery. He's pairing off the lies. He's remembering what had happened, comparing it to the book. Poor Mary Jane has to listen to this, and she is not hiding her boredom. And basically, Peter is kind of simping for the ex, but he's doing it right in front of his current wife. So this is just torture for Mary Jane at this point. And what's happening? This kind of recapping the story, and apparently Professor Miles is talking about when he first had feelings for Gwen Stacey. It was during when her and Peter Parker had a biology class, and he was a creepy old man, and he was creeping on one of his students, even though he saw her with an age-appropriate boyfriend. So anyway, that he became more and more obsessed, became a dirtier and dirtier old man. He was resentful of Peter because he had her attention. He had read about her death in the paper, and it affected him greatly because the dirty old man had no one to creep on at this point. And he's still obsessed over Peter Parker, but he was doing it in a very wimpy way, in a very creepy way. He was just following Peter and just going, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. But he wasn't doing it out loud. And he said it was during one of these stalker creeper moments that he saw Peter Parker change into Spider-Man. And the thinking is that because Peter viewed Professor Miles as a friend, he wouldn't view him with any danger. And at this point, Professor Miles was kind of a wimp. He wasn't going to approach Peter. So yeah, he wasn't a danger to Spider-Man. So then Professor Miles, he sees this, he knows Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and he knows that Spider-Man was responsible for Gwen's death, thus Peter Parker murdered Gwen, and he was going to go for revenge. And he had used one of his students for the cloning. So he used, I think, knockout gas on a particular student. Then he prepped her for the cloning chamber. I guess at this point she had already been injected with the virus. And then at some point, kind of indeterminate amount of time, the recombinant DNA worked, and enough cells had taken over and replaced the current cells with Gwen's cells. So basically, the clone of Gwen Stacey here is emerging. So anyway, we see Professor Miles. He's quite happy. It looks like his DNA virus is working as intended. And then the last entry is quote, I can always activate the Charon scenario. This is the last diary entry. So at this point, Professor Miles, he had already worked out this scenario, but he didn't feel like writing about it at that time. Mary Jane is happy that the story is over. She doesn't want to hear about this. Peter is asking questions that really don't need to be answered at this point. Peter Parker, again, he can't believe a supervillain lied to him. And Mary Jane is telling him, listen, what's the difference? This is all ancient history. And Peter is recapping the original clone saga here. And it turns out that the Spider-Man clone might not have been a clone from scratch, but it might have been Professor Miles' assistant, because Professor Miles had an assistant who found out what those illegal experiments that Professor Miles was doing, and apparently Miles originally said that he had murdered him, but then it turned out in this kind of reshaping of it, it turned out that he just used his body to create the Peter Parker Spider-Man clone. So anyway, Peter decides he's gonna to investigate as Spider-Man. He kind of can't sleep anyway, and he just needs to kind of clear these thoughts in his head. Mary Jane is super bothered by this. She doesn't like it when Peter talks about Gwen, because she feels that kind of Peter goes into this trance, and it's sort of like he's sort of being losing reality and just overly obsessed about events that he can't change. So then we see Spider-Man. He's web swinging throughout the city, kind of thinking about what was going on with Professor Miles. Again, he can't believe a supervillain would lie to him, and he's trying to kind of sort out the story about what's going on. Because the thing is, the Charon had already introduced himself the previous issue, so he's right to ask, why is this guy showing up? So on one hand, asking these questions is helpful, but I think at the same time, he might be asking too many questions, or questions that really aren't relevant to the issue at hand. So the Charon, he introduces himself. He knows who Spider-Man is, so he's going to call him by his proper name. And the Charon is introducing himself to Spider-Man, and there's a reason for that. And the thing is that this version of the Charon had never encountered Spider-Man before, but Spider-Man had encountered a previous version of the Charon. So the thing is, the Charon doesn't know that he's the clone of a clone. However, this version of the Charon really isn't interested in the backstory here. And he's just out to do what he was designed to do. And that was to avenge Gwen Stacey, and that was to kill either Peter Parker or Spider-Man. So this version of the Charon is just going right to work here. He's not bothering with any supervillain small talk here. The Charon is a little surprised that he can't really surprise Spider-Man here, because Spider-Man already knows this guy's power set, and he's already fought a version of this villain and won. So Peter Parker feels pretty confident in this, and Spider-Man, I should call him Spider-Man since he's dressed that way. He tells the Charon that he doesn't want to run from him. He wants to do something else. So he throws him into a wall, and the Charon is kind of shocked by this. However, it turns out the Charon really doesn't have a nervous system, or a really active one for the most part, so he doesn't feel pain. And that kind of throw didn't really bother him too much. And he counterattacks Spider-Man here. Spider-Man is really taken because the Karen is really super powered. And however, Spider-Man's saying he's not impressed. He's saying, listen, I know who you are and I've faced you before, and I know what you are. And it feels like Spider-Man is kind of being a little overconfident, and the Charon gets one over him because he gets a whiff of that dust that Karen carries in those, I guess, leather satchels of his. This is the knockout gas, so it's not death, the death dust, as he calls it. So Spider-Man is just knocked out at the moment. Then we cut to the cemetery, and it's the typical dark and gloomy moment. It's raining. This is what you would normally associate with a graveyard. And Spider-Man is just waking up after being unconscious for, I guess, a little spell. And he sees that he's right next to the graves of Gwen and Captain Stacey here. So this is the Stacey family and where they're buried. However, Spider-Man he's interrupted from reflecting on this because the Charon is there, and the Charon decides that some of the questions that Spider-Man brought up to him, they might need some answering. So he's gonna hold off on killing Spider-Man at this point, just so he can get a few answers. Spider-Man, I should say, he's being totally transparent here. Someone told Peter that there is a code where superheroes and supervillains are honest and truthful with each other. No one else told anyone else about this code, but nevertheless, Spider-Man is upholding it. He's saying how he learned about the virus, and then Spider-Man says, "Listen, you're not the first clone, so stop thinking of yourself as the first one. There have been others." The Charon isn't sure that he could address what Peter had said, because he doesn't have enough memory cells. He doesn't have enough memories to answer some of the questions that Spider-Man's bringing up here. The Charon, he's sharing, his purpose, and his purpose was to avenge the murder of Gwen Stacey. And the Charon, he feels that this banter is not really going to go anywhere, and he just decides to go ahead and try to murk Spider-Man. However, Spider-Man is familiar with this move because, again, this version of the Charon is always surprised that Spider-Man has knowledge about him. So he's kind of the slow clone. So the red dust, the death dust, is out of Charon's hands. So the Charon has to fight Spider-Man mano a mano. And also, Spider-Man has to worry not to get touched by the Charon, because his touch would mean death. So the two are fighting it out in the graveyard. Spider-Man's confident. He's saying, "Listen, I beat you before. I'll beat you again." The Charon's saying, "Listen, past performance is not in reflective of future results." And we see the Charon, he still has his death touch, because the tree that he touches immediately dies. And this Charon is not interested in really small banter that much. He wants to get his job done. So he doesn't feel like there's any unspoken conversations between him and Spider-Man. They've said everything they need to say to each other. This is just kind of incidental dialogue at this point, and Karen's confident that he'll win. So the Charon lashes out. Again, he's saying he's going to make his creator, Miles Warren, really proud. And oh yeah, part of the Charon's programming was that after he had completed his mission, he was going to tell Warren Miles how he did it and how wonderful it was. So the Charon is operating under the belief that Warren Miles is still alive. But Spider-Man is noting that he doesn't seem to know this. And because it turns out that Warren Miles is buried in this cemetery, he feels that if he goes to a certain gravesite, he can shake the Charon's belief system here. The Charon, even though he's not unknown to Spider-Man, he still has an impressive power set. And he's able to sort of skim Spider-Man's mind telepathically. So he gets an idea of what type of plans he's sensing from Spider-Man. So he counters some of those plans. However, it turns out that when the Charon jump kicked Spider-Man, he hit him in a way that, in a place where Spider-Man definitely wanted to end up, at, I should say. Then Spider-Man, he appears helpless. He's kind of has the wind knocked out of him. The Charon, he's just strutting. He's strutting and he's bragging. He feels that he has this one and that he can kind of play with his bait a little. However, the thing is as the Charon's prepared to touch Spider-Man, he notices the tombstone that's behind him, and it belongs to Dr. Warren Miles. And this shocks the Charon. He stops what he's doing, and Spider-Man takes advantage of this moment by really cold cocking him here. And Spider-Man kind of really digs it in by telling him Warren Miles is dead. And then he really starts being cruel. And Spider-Man says, quote, "He was a sick man obsessed with a dead woman." And, oh boy, I can imagine. I think maybe Gerry Conway might have gone a little too far with maybe his true feelings about fans of Gwen Stacey and all the crap he had to deal with for those 16 years here. But Spider-Man is just really beating up on the Charon. So at this point, Spider-Man is Gerry Conway, and the Charon is every annoying fan that bothered him about Gwen Stacey being murdered. And he is just taking out his fury. Spider-Man, he's just being super self-righteous, and he's just popping the Charon. The Charon is, at this point, is just, he's just beaten at this point. However, the Charon, as badly injured as he is, as hurt as he is emotionally, he still has his feelings, and he hates Spider-Man. And he's gonna act out on that. And again, just the righteousness of Spider-Man, or Gerry Conway as Spider-Man, just beating the crap out of this avatar for Gwen's fans. The Charon is knocked unconscious. He's buried under, some rubble here. Not very dignified here. Spider-Man, he's trying to figure out what to do, because he probably guesses, I think he knows that there's definitely an innocent person under the Charon DNA body here, and it's Malcolm. I don't think Spider-Man knows that it's Malcolm, but he's right in that there's someone who's an innocent person might still be trapped in this body. I think at this point, there's really no cure for this. This person is the Charon now, and Malcolm is dead. But super comic books didn't want to touch on that. So anyway, this part I found touching here. And Spider-Man, he unmasks himself and he visits Gwen's site. And he thinks to himself that maybe he's also a sick guy, obsessed with a dead woman. And that maybe this is the proper way of saying goodbye to Gwen. And kind of a few things. One, this is, again, very touching, I think, because even though Gwen never meant much to me, there was a journey. And it was with Peter, and it was with Gwen, and of course it was with the readers. And that meant a lot to the characters within the comic. It also meant a lot to the fans because they cared about her because, Peter cared about her. And it's kind of good for him to reflect on it. But he's also being realistic, realizing that the journey that he had with Gwen ended prematurely. And he has to accept it for what it was, and that it's never really going to come back. So he needs to kind of move on from that. And that's what he's doing here. And I'm sure Gary Conway was hoping that this would please shut up those fans at those Comic Cons he would go to. So anyway, that's the end of the story. I know it was a good one. There's bullpen bulletins. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on. This just reads like gibberish to me, to be honest. And we look at the spectacular Spider Mail, and they're talking about mostly issue 142. I think all the letters were positive, so that looks like it looks like that was an issue that was well received. So anyway, that's it, and that is my review of the Spectacular Spider-Man issue number 149, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.